I would like to congratulate the Center for Development Economics on the 50 years of magnificent work providing its students with necessary training and tools to face the challenges of improving the economy in the developing world. I would say that also many of the alumni of the CDE have become policy makers in our countries, and I would say that some of them have achieved very successful stories. In any case, if they are not very successful, in any case, they have become better professionals as well. Also, I want to thank Gerard for inviting me to this meeting, apart from share with you all these 2 days about important things of economics and issues that are very important now. It's also very nice for me to come back to Williams to visit after almost 30 years. And I share the same, like Toga mentioned before, the flavor of the CDE, and it seems that everything is equal at the Center for Development Economics. Having said that, I won't resist to talk a little bit about something that was very provocative by Professor Stiglitz yesterday. And it is about how the economics approach has been in the last, let's say, 20 years. But I think if we see the last experience of Latin America, especially of Latin America, I see that maybe the conclusions that we arrived yesterday and mainly this morning can be revisiting at least to this thing. And I will just take 2 or 3 topics about this to reaffirm my view. It's very important to see that the degree of resilience that Latin America country has shown during the last crisis. I could talk about some common characteristics of the financial crisis all over the world, but instead of giving lessons to the U.S., I will have some questions to have to see how the policy makers in the U.S. will face the enormous challenges that they have to go ahead. But beginning with the Latin America case, I will say that during the last global crisis is totally different compared with its own past and to the and also to other emerging economies. This newfound resilience reflects the steady progress made by many Latin American countries in strengthening their fiscal stance, their macro stability, microfinancial immunity, and also the degrees to maneuver. In the past, it was very difficult to be confident of the fiscal and monetary policies of our countries. Now, I will say that many of them have improving a lot. For instance, in the monetary stance, we have many countries applying inflation targeting, which has been very successful as a tool in our economies. And I will mention also 2 additional important factors that occurs in the last years. One has to be with the difference between Latin America becoming a net creditor in the debt side to the rest of the world, instead of being as in the last 2 decades, being as a net debtor. This is a very important thing to notice, and it is very useful because a lot of management, a lot of improvement in the debt management has occurred. And also, the way the Latin American countries get into the international market. Instead of doing like with debt, we have changed a little bit, and the main feature now is that we are a creditor and also a debtor in the equity side. This is an important factor that has to be taken in account. The second thing is a growing connection to emerging Asia and to China in particular. China matters a lot because for Latin American countries, not just because of its direct links through its demand for agricultural and mineral products, but also indirectly through the impact that China has in the international markets for commodities for which Latin America is abundant, and third country markets to which Latin America also exports. In the past, even when the initial turbulence or initial problems was completely exogenous from Latin America, as was, for instance, the case in 1999 with the Russian crisis, or the failure of the long-term, the giant hedge fund long-term capital management in the same year, the macroeconomics and financial vulnerabilities were such that the domestic effects of the external disturbance were substantially magnified in our countries. The kind of experiences gave place to the popular saying that when the U.S. gets a cold, Latin America suffers a pneumonia. It happened this time that the resilience of Latin America is totally different, and at least for this time being, we are in a better position. And it has been, as I said before, by the improving of the three traditional weaknesses that we had in Latin America. First, weak currencies. Second, weak financial and banking system. And third, a weak fiscal stance. The scope for macro policy maneuvering in these circumstances was heavily constrained, and policy responses tended to be procyclical themselves. For instance, the fear of floating the exchange rate due to the fact that the main debt in the countries were dollarized, in dollar terms, made it impossible to move the exchange rate. In that case, the central bankers used to increase the interest rate, something that Mr. Stiglitz was very against for that yesterday. But this is the only way to prevent the flight to capital to other countries. And in the same sense, if you have, as a Minister of Finance, if you have the capital markets closed suddenly, the only way to work is or to increase taxes, or in any case to cut expenditures, even when the situation in the economy was in a bad situation, or the growth was very low. So this larger exposure to the external shocks and the magnification effects during crisis has hit the debate on the markets about financial globalization. However, sounder macroeconomic and financial policy frameworks and a shift in the Latin American region toward a safest form of international integration should be taken into account to revisiting at least the globalization debate. This is something that I needed to mention since the comments that were made yesterday. From the financial crisis with the U.S., and I will say that some questions, for instance, if they are similar to other crises around the world. There is a paper of Carmen Reinhardt saying that it looks like everything is different, but at the end, the crisis is the same here or in Latin America or in Asia when it comes to financial sectors. The second point is how to get out of the situation and going forward in the next. Well, the problem seems that financial crises always happen in an environment of macroeconomic imbalances. It has happened in Latin America, and it seems to be happening also in the U.S. If you see several figures that we check about federal government total revenue and expenditures, as well as the federal government gross debt in billions of US dollars, all of them shows the imbalances that the U.S. are facing. The U.S. are facing since, let's say, the last 5 or 6 years. This is the one cause of financial crisis. The second one is what Mr. Stiglitz is very concerned about, the information asymmetries and the principal agent problems. And I will say that also the weak regulatory framework. I will say that just adding to what Gerard said, you can have in a country a very bad Minister of Finance and a very bad government, and it will cost, let's say, 4 or 5 points of GDP. In the case of a financial crisis, it costs the GDP in many cases. So this is very important that the regulatory framework will be in place to avoid this kind of situations. And we can give a lot of characteristics of a good regulatory framework, but I want to mention one that is very distinctive in the U.S. and has to do with the salaries of the American bankers. And it's something that it seems it doesn't seem very difficult to talk about this, but it seems that at the end have a lot of problems. For instance, it appears that the compensation framework for American bankers provides the wrong incentives for them, since it is not clear whether this framework works to add value to the firm in the long term, or is just designed to move the value of the stock in the short run. And the problem is that due to the current compensation framework, there is a misalignment of interests since they are rewarded for their performance in the short run. This misalignment of interest must be addressed in a way that the incentives for innovation are not affected, but at the same time, long-run investment behavior must be encouraged. Some solution has to be established in the short run. Otherwise, the system won't work. I don't know if this special committee that was created by the Congress established something about this, but a solution will be to establish a fund with all these incentives have to be put there, and still for some time to see if the value added of the work is established in the long run or just in the value of the stock. And this is just to mention one of the pathetic problems that one can find in the American situation in the banking sector. The other problem that is very clear is that the excessive leverage in the banking sector, something that Basel III, I think, will be said. But this is not the problem if the system can find the vehicle to go away from the supervision, and as Mr. Stiglitz said today, widespread the risk all over, and especially in institutions that don't have any kind of supervision. So this is the second one thing that one must take care in the American banking situation. Something will be said by, or has been established by the Basel III, but in any case, I don't see if in the U.S. It will take too much time, because some period it has been established in some period of time, but I think it should be done very quickly. And finally, the third point about the weak regulatory framework is the so-called too big to fail. And the problem of the too big to fail is that after the crisis, the ones that survive the crisis become even larger institutions, and with the same problem of that too big to fail and the moral hazard that we face with them. At the end of the day, all the things have to be in the budget, and the budget has to bail out the system. It's the only way to go through the problem. And in the case of the U.S., the difference is that the U.S. almost has unlimited issues of paper money. So it can finance all the bailout without adjusting the economy at some point, until the point of the people want to lend money to the American government. And the curious thing is that under this situation, in the U.S., it happens that deflation occurs the appreciation of the currency. In our countries, with a limited capacity of issuance money and to leverage or to finance the bailout, the problem has been inflation and also the devaluation of the currency with a very high social cost. And here in the U.S., we don't have any freezing of accounts of what we call in Latin America, and it was named in Argentina, El Corralito. So we don't have freezing of accounts, no capital flight we have seen in the U.S., and no harm to depositors or other creditors. Maybe some shareholders have lost the equity, but the point is, who will pay the bill? And the bill has to be paid someday. So the financial system has stabilized, although Gerard told us that there are some toxic assets in the balance sheets of some institutions, but in the way it is solving is with, the cost of money for the banks is almost zero, and lending rates for these banks is about 5%. So if you keep this policy for 2 years more, the problem is solved. The balance sheets are very clean, and there is no problem. The banks that survived the crisis are in bigger now, for instance, those that take Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs. Financing from multilateral organizations, you don't have that need. We, in Latin America, needed very much the only way to finance these problems were the multilateral organizations. And I will say that it was very helpful for us. Although the critics of against the IMF and the World Bank, as early this afternoon somebody mentioned, we are members of those clubs, and we have to take all the advantage that to be part of, to be member of them. And for Latin America countries, when all the markets, all the capital markets were closed, the only source for financing was multilateral organizations. And not in the way that it was mentioned yesterday, that the minister has to wait to the mission of the IMF to see if the budget is cut in 10% or the interest rate has to be increased in 40 or 80%. No, I think that the discussions were in very good terms, trying to solve the structural problems of the countries. And I think all this work that has been done, let's say the last 20 years, like especially the last 10 years, have proven a very good results. What I mentioned before, the resilience of Latin America against this tremendous and this big crisis in the U.S. that otherwise we, in the past, we are not able to manage. We are seeing that this is mainly because we have all the support from multilateral organizations. And the question is, okay, the financial system in the U.S. has stabilized, the bailout has been given. When will the financial adjustment is going to start in the U.S.? This is the big question. Somebody will argue, well, it's very difficult to start the adjustment if the economy is growing at this rate. But my point is, okay, maybe it's not today, but when is the time to start the adjustment going on? And I will put some more things that make difficult for the policymakers in the American economy to work in this sense. And the question is, a fiscal adjustment feasible considering an aging population and higher entitlements? This is the main thing that I see like a problem in the U.S. Because in Latin America, participation in social security system is very low, as well as unemployment benefits are very low. So we didn't have this problem during the financial crisis. The policymakers in the U.S. have the political capital for entitlement reform when they cut programs. Is it possible to do in the U.S.? Will they only finance the entitlements for baby boomers and introduce reforms that will affect the millennials? Something has to be done with the social security system. The social security system cannot be worked as it is working now. You have to cross the line in some point and say, well, the benefits will have to change. So those are the main questions and the main challenges that American society will face in the near future. And I don't know if I just watched TV yesterday at the news, and it seems that from the political point of view, the next midterm elections will be quite against. This is what I see. quite against the government. So will the American society will have the cohesion to implement these reforms? And I will say something that maybe was very difficult to talk in the past. I was in charge of negotiating the free trade agreement with the U.S. when the president of the World Bank was in charge of that, Mr. Selig. And the main point that I was to point out was that, okay, we have free movement of goods and services. We should have a free movement of capital. And third, we should have a free movement of labor force. That is very important for all the world, not only for the U.S. And for instance, for the U.S., it's important to have coming new young workers to the economy because, you know, the structure of the Social Security needs a very wide base to finance the aging population. So my point is that maybe it's cheaper to take care of elderly in developing countries. We have nice weather, good beaches, and productivity of the people in developing countries will increase a lot. If we can do this as a policy, as a whole, will be benefit for both sides. I will end saying that something of this is just happening. I work in a private bank, and I used to meet with my customers, foreign customers going to Ecuador that want to buy a house, very cheaper house, very nice place in very nice locations, and they go there to stay 7-8 months a year, and then go back to the U.S. And they use the Medicare there because it's very cheaper. We have a very good physician as well, preparing the U.S., by the way. So something of that we have to, can we work? And if there is the political cohesion in the U.S., something of this can be the solution. Thank you very much.